The termination letter felt like a slap in the face. A week ago, I was Keystone Logistics, star employee, fresh off a $5,000 data analytics course the company had paid for. My boss, Frank, had even shaken my hand. Today, in a sterile HR office in Charlotte, his words were clinical. "We've decided to go in a different direction, Alex. Frankly, we don't need these new skills. Your position is redundant." Redundant? I was 42 years old with 15 years of my life invested in this place. They hadn't just fired me. They had sharpened the very sword I would use to burn their stagnant empire to the ground. And they had absolutely no idea. Let me paint a picture of Keystone Logistics for you. Imagine a company where the most advanced piece of technology in the executive suite is a fax machine that still sees regular use. That was Frank's world. He'd been VP of operations since I was in high school, and his motto was, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it." The problem was, everything was breaking. I'd spent 15 years there, starting on the warehouse floor and climbing to senior manager. I knew our logistics network inside and out. I saw the inefficiencies, the money we were bleeding, because of outdated methods. That data analytics course wasn't just a resume booster for me. It was a desperate attempt to show them the future. I built a proposal, showed them how predictive analytics could streamline our routes, save millions. They approved the $5,000 course, and for a moment, I thought I'd broken through their wall of complacency. But I was wrong. They didn't see a lifeline. They saw a threat to their comfortable, predictable, and slowly dying way of doing things. They didn't just fire an employee, they fired their own future. 15 years is a long time. It wasn't always this bad. When I started on the loading dock, Keystone was a respected name in Charlotte, a place with pride. But that pride curdled into arrogance. Led by Frank and his circle of yes-men, they saw any new idea not as an opportunity, but as a personal insult to the way they'd always done things. The turning point for me, the moment I knew we were in real trouble, was the loss of the Vanguard Textiles account. They were a massive local apparel company, our biggest client by a wide margin. They came to us with a simple request. They needed real-time inventory tracking for their new e-commerce division. This was 5 years ago. It wasn't science fiction. It was the new industry standard. I spent weeks researching affordable software solutions. I found one that would cost $50,000 to implement, but would save us triple that in the first year on the Vanguard account alone. I built a bulletproof presentation, scheduled a meeting, and walked into Frank's office feeling like I was about to save the day. He let me get about 3 minutes in before he held up a hand. He leaned back in his worn leather chair, the one that always groaned in protest, and gave me that condescending smile. "Alex," he said, "our technology is the telephone. Our clients like that. They can call us and speak to a human being." I tried to explain that this wasn't about replacing people, but empowering them with better tools. He wasn't listening. He waved me off, saying, "We're not some Silicon Valley startup, we're a relationships company." 3 months later, Vanguard Textiles terminated their contract and signed with a firm out of Atlanta. The loss was catastrophic, a multi-million-dollar blow that sent ripples through the entire company. In the emergency meeting, Frank stood before us and blamed Vanguard for being unreasonably demanding. He never once acknowledged that his refusal to adapt was the real reason. That was the moment my loyalty died. I knew then that small suggestions were pointless. I needed overwhelming, undeniable proof. I needed a cannon, not a pea shooter. That's why I pitched the data analytics course. It was my last-ditch effort to build that cannon. I never imagined they'd pay for it, load it for me, and then hand it over on my way out the door. That meeting in the HR office was an exercise in corporate gaslighting. Frank sat across the cheap laminate table, looking utterly untroubled. Next to him was Sarah from HR, a woman maybe half my age, who refused to make eye contact, her gaze fixed on a stack of papers that held the 15-year summary of my professional life. "Frank, this doesn't make any sense," I said. my voice dangerously calm. "Last week, you approved my proposal. You paid for the course. I have a full implementation plan on my desk right now that will save us over $1 million in the first year." Frank steepled his fingers, a gesture I'd once mistaken for thoughtfulness. Now I saw it for what it was, a condescending affectation. "Alex, we appreciate the initiative. Truly. But after careful consideration, the board and I feel that such a drastic shift in our operational model is premature. It's a risk we're not willing to take." "A risk?" I almost laughed. "The risk is standing still while our competitors eat us alive. We lost the Vanguard account because we refused to adapt. This is the exact same mistake, Frank." He sighed, as if explaining a complex concept to a child. "We're a relationships company, Alex. Our clients value the personal touch. All this data," he said the word like it was something foul, "it just gets in the way. We need to focus on what made Keystone great in the first place." That's when Sarah slid a folder toward me. "This is your severance agreement, Alex. The company is offering 2 weeks pay per the employee handbook. 2 weeks. For 15 years of service. For loyalty that had bordered on stupidity." I stared at the folder, then back at Frank. "So that's it. You invest in me, I show you a path forward, and you show me the door?" Frank had the audacity to lean forward, putting on a mask of sincerity. "Look, it's just business. And to be honest, your role is being consolidated. My old colleague Bill Jensen is coming on as a special consultant. He's got 30 years in the business. He knows our model." Bill Jensen. I knew the name. A relic from a rival company that had gone bankrupt 5 years earlier. Frank wasn't just firing me. He was replacing the future with a ghost from the past. He was building a fortress of obsolescence and kicking out the one person who had the key to the gate. That was the final, brutal twist of the knife. It wasn't about redundancy. It was about protecting his throne from anyone who spoke a different language than his. I didn't argue anymore. I signed the papers, my signature a furious scrawl. Sarah explained that I had 30 minutes to gather my personal belongings, and that she would escort me. The walk back to my desk was a blur. The open-plan office, usually buzzing with phone calls and keyboard clicks, fell silent as I passed. Heads dropped. Eyes darted away. These were people I'd worked with for years, people I'd mentored. Now they were just spectators at my corporate execution. I packed my box quickly. A few photos, a coffee mug my daughter had painted, a couple of industry awards. Then my eyes landed on the framed certificate from the data analytics course, sitting proudly on my desk. For a second I thought about leaving it there, a monument to their epic stupidity. But then I smiled. No, this wasn't theirs. They had paid for it, but the knowledge was mine. It was the most valuable thing in the entire building, and they were letting me walk out the door with it. I picked it up and placed it carefully on top of everything else in the box. As Sarah walked me to the exit, past the ancient fax machine and the portraits of the company founders, I didn't feel defeated. I felt armed. They hadn't just given me a severance check. They had given me a severance check. They had given me a head start. The glass door slid shut behind me with a quiet hiss, cutting off the stale, recycled air of Keystone Logistics for the last time. I didn't look back. In the parking lot, I placed the box on the passenger seat of my car and just sat there for a full minute, the Charlotte sun glinting off the windshield. My heart wasn't pounding. My hands weren't shaking. There was just silence, a profound, clarifying quiet in my head where the noise of corporate nonsense used to be. For 15 years, my days had been a frantic scramble to patch holes in a sinking ship. Now, the ship had sailed on without me, and I was standing on solid ground, watching it head directly for an iceberg. I looked at the certificate sitting on top of the box, my diploma in their destruction. The drive home was automatic. My mind, now unburdened by pointless meetings and bureaucratic red tape, was finally free to do what it was trained for. It started running models, not on logistics routes, but on Keystone's business. I saw their client list, their profit margins, their inefficiencies. I saw every crack in their foundation, and I knew exactly how to hammer the wedges in. I walked into my own house, and my wife, Anna, looked up from the kitchen counter. Her smile faded when she saw the box in my hands. "Alex, what's wrong?" I set the box down gently. "They fired me," I said, my voice even. Her face crumpled with worry. "What? But the training course? How could they?" She started to talk about mortgages and our daughter's college fund, her voice rising with panic. I held up a hand, not to silence her, but to ground her. "Anna, breathe. It's the best thing that could have happened." I took her hands. They were trembling slightly. Mine were rock steady. "Frank thinks he's an old-school genius. He's not. He's a dinosaur, and he just handed a paleontologist a map to the boneyard." I saw the confusion in her eyes slowly give way to curiosity. "What are you talking about?" I tapped the certificate in the box. "They paid $5,000 to teach me how to build a leaner, faster, smarter logistics company. Then they fired me." I checked the paperwork. No non-compete agreement. They left me with a 15-year head start on understanding their every weakness. "Frank didn't just give me a sword, Anna. He gave me the schematics to his entire castle. And we are going to build something better, right next door." The next morning, while Frank was probably sipping stale coffee and listening to Bill Jensen reminisce about the good old days, I was declaring war. Our spare bedroom, which had been a quiet repository for dusty exercise equipment and old paperbacks, was systematically transformed. My diploma from the data analytics course was the first thing I hung on the wall. It wasn't just a certificate, it was my declaration of intent. I bought 2 massive whiteboards from an office supply store and mounted them myself. On one, I wrote Keystone's weaknesses. On the other, Apex Logistics, the solution. Apex. The highest point. It felt right. Lean, modern, and the polar opposite of the dead weight of a Keystone. For 2 straight days, fueled by black coffee and Anna's unwavering belief, I didn't just work, I reverse-engineered my old company. I mapped out Keystone's entire client portfolio from memory. I knew their contracts, their pain points, their delivery schedules. I knew which drivers were always late, which warehouses were chronically mismanaged, and which account managers promised the world and delivered a postcard. Frank's playbook was my Bible. I just read it backwards, looking for the sins. My new skills were the magnifying glass. I plugged 15 years of institutional knowledge into the models I'd learned to build. I ran simulations on Keystone's routing software, which I knew was a decade out of date. The results were staggering. I could quantify their inefficiency down to the dollar and the minute. They were wasting, on average, 18% on fuel costs due to suboptimal routing. Their warehouse allocation was creating an average delivery delay of 36 hours for high-priority shipments. It was all there. In the data they were too arrogant to look at. Now, I needed my first target. A beachhead. I couldn't go after their biggest clients yet. I didn't have the infrastructure. I needed a strategic win. A client who was big enough to hurt Keystone, but small enough for me to handle flawlessly. A client who was already bleeding from Keystone's incompetence. The name jumped out at me from my mental map: Sterling Manufacturing. Sterling made high-precision components for the aerospace industry. Their entire business model was built on just-in-time delivery. Penalties for being late weren't just financial. They were catastrophic to their reputation. I knew for a fact they were furious with Keystone. I had personally sat in 3 meetings where their logistics director, a sharp woman named Maria Flores, had practically begged Frank for better tracking and more reliable delivery windows. Frank's response was always the same condescending lecture about the personal touch and how they should just call him if there was a problem. I spent the next 48 hours building a case study focused on one company, Sterling. I pulled public shipping data and combined it with my insider knowledge of Keystone's routes. I built a predictive model showing Sterling's current supply chain. It was a chaotic mess of red lines, indicating delays and inefficient transfers. Then, I built a second model, the Apex Logistics model. I rerouted everything through an optimized network, using dynamic pricing for freight and predictive maintenance schedules for trucks I didn't even own yet. The result was beautiful. It was a symphony of efficiency. I could prove, with hard data, that I could cut Sterling's shipping costs by 22% and, more importantly, increase their on-time delivery rate from Keystone's dismal 84% to a guaranteed 99.5%. I wasn't selling a vague promise. I was selling mathematical certainty. I created a 10-page proposal, clean and professional, filled with charts and graphs that told a story of incompetence on one side and salvation on the other. The final page was a simple, side-by-side comparison, the Keystone Way versus the Apex Way. Anna came into the office, a plate of sandwiches in her hand, and saw the two models projected on the wall. "What am I looking at?" she asked. "That," I said, pointing to the tangled mess of red, "is why Sterling Manufacturing is about to fire Keystone Logistics. And this," I pointed to my clean green-lined model, "is why they're about to hire us." She looked at the proposal on my screen. "You don't have a single truck, Alex, or a warehouse." "I don't need them yet," I replied, my eyes not leaving the screen. "I have something better. I have the data. I'll start as a broker, a consultant. I'll use third-party carriers who are already better and cheaper than Keystone's aging fleet. I'll manage the logistics, take a percentage, and save Sterling a fortune. We build capital, we build a reputation, and then we build an empire on Keystone's ashes." The final step was the hardest. I picked up my phone. My heart hammered against my ribs, the first time I'd felt a shred of fear since this all began. This was it. The moment of truth. I had Sterling's director, Maria Flores, in my contacts. I took a deep breath, straightened the collar of my shirt as if she could see me, and pressed the call button. It rang twice. "This is Maria Flores." Her voice was curt, busy. "Maria, it's Alex Mercer." There was a pause. "Alex, I heard what happened at Keystone. I'm sorry to hear it. Frank is a fool." Her words were like a shot of adrenaline. The validation was immense. "He did me a favor, actually," I said, my voice now steady and confident, "which is why I'm calling. I know you're not happy with your current logistics. I know they're costing you money and creating headaches you don't need." "You can say that again," she muttered. "I've started my own firm, Apex Logistics. We're a data-driven consultancy. We don't guess, we calculate. I've spent the last few days running an analysis on your current supply chain. I can show you exactly where Keystone is failing you, and I can present a plan that will cut your costs by over 20% and all but eliminate late deliveries. All I need is 20 minutes of your time." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint clicking of a keyboard. She was probably looking at her schedule, weighing the risk of wasting 20 minutes against the potential of solving one of her biggest problems. My entire future hung on her next words. "You have my attention, Alex," she said finally. "My boardroom, tomorrow at 10. I walked into the Sterling Manufacturing lobby at 9:45 a.m., 15 minutes early. The place was a stark contrast to Keystone. Polished concrete floors, glass walls, a digital display showing real-time production metrics. It smelled of ozone and progress. This was a company living in the present, being held hostage by a logistics partner stuck in the past. Maria Flores met me herself. No assistant, no preamble. She was all business, her handshake firm, her eyes sharp. "Alex, you have 20 minutes. Let's see what you've got." In her boardroom, I didn't waste a second on pleasantries. I connected my laptop to their massive screen. "Maria, I'm not here to sell you on promises. I'm here to show you the math." On the left side of the screen, I brought up the first model. I called it the Keystone Bottleneck. It was a web of angry red lines representing her current supply chain, with pulsating nodes indicating delays at specific Keystone-run transfer hubs. "This is your life right now," I said, pointing to a cluster of red. "According to my analysis of Keystone's network, your shipment of CNC milled aluminum casings scheduled for delivery this afternoon has a 78% probability of being at least 4 hours late." I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Keystone's system is reactive. A truck breaks down, and your critical parts sit idle while Frank tells you about the importance of relationships. Then, I clicked a button. The right side of the screen came to life. It was my Apex model. Clean, efficient green lines flowed from point A to point B. This is what it should look like. By using a network of pre-vetted, more reliable independent carriers and optimizing routes based on real-time data, we eliminate these bottlenecks. This isn't a guess. It's a calculation, a 22% cost reduction and a 99.5% on-time delivery rate. She leaned forward, studying the screen. It looks good on a PowerPoint, Alex, but you're a one-man operation in a spare bedroom. Keystone has a fleet. They have infrastructure. Before I could respond, her desk phone buzzed. She shot me an annoyed look and answered it on speaker. "What is it, David?" The voice on the other end was frantic. "Maria, it's the shipment from Asheville. The one with the aluminum casings. Keystone just called. Their truck broke down outside of Statesville. They're saying it won't be here until tomorrow morning, at the earliest." I didn't smile. I didn't say, "I told you so." I just tapped the screen, pointing to the pulsating red node that I had highlighted just moments before. It was located exactly over Statesville. The universe hadn't just proven my point. It had taken out a full-page ad. Maria stared at the phone, then at my screen, then back at the phone. She took a deep, steadying breath. "David, thank you. I'll handle it." She hung up. The silence in the room was absolute. She just looked at me. "How did you know?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "It wasn't magic," I said calmly. "It's data. I know their fleet maintenance is a joke. I know that specific route is handled by a truck that's 5 years past its prime. Keystone sees it as a truck. I see it as a liability with a 78% chance of failure. Frank's relationships didn't get your parts here on time, did they?" She leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just found a better weapon. "Forget the 20 minutes, she said. "Let's talk about a pilot program. I've got a new supply lane opening up to a client in Ohio. Keystone was supposed to get the contract. Instead, it's yours. Show me that 99.5% isn't just a number on a screen. You do that, and we can talk about the rest of their portfolio." Walking out of that building, I felt 10 feet tall. I hadn't just won a contract. I had proven my thesis. Data beats dogma. Every single time. My phone buzzed in my pocket as I reached my car. It was an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Hello? Alex, it's Mark, from the Keystone warehouse." Mark was one of the good ones, a shift supervisor I'd promoted twice, a guy who actually cared. "Listen, I can't talk long. I heard what Frank did. It was garbage. We all know it." His voice was low, conspiratorial. "Just wanted to give you a heads up. Bill Jensen just came through here. He's planning a cost-saving consolidation. He's shutting down the Greensboro cross-docking facility at the end of the month. He thinks he can just reroute everything through Charlotte without a hitch. The guys here think he's nuts. It's going to be a complete disaster." I gripped the phone tighter. This wasn't just a tip. It was a blueprint for my next attack. "Mark," I said, a grin spreading across my face. "Thank you. Stay." Mark's tip was a gift. Bill Jensen, Frank's hand-picked fossil, was about to detonate a bomb in the middle of Keystone's own supply chain. The Greensboro closure was pure, old-school arrogance, a numbers-on-a-spreadsheet decision made by someone who hadn't set foot in a warehouse in 20 years. They saw a line item to be cut. I saw the heart of their regional distribution network. While they were busy sharpening their own axe, I executed Maria's Ohio pilot program with surgical precision. For 2 weeks, Apex Logistics was a whirlwind of calculated action. I managed everything from my spare bedroom, coordinating with my hand-picked carriers, tracking every shipment in real time, and sending Maria automated updates before she even thought to ask for them. Every single delivery arrived on time, not just on the right day, but within the promised 1-hour window. Maria's feedback was succinct. This is what logistics is supposed to feel like. Prepare a proposal for our entire East Coast network. The bomb at Keystone went off on a Tuesday. My phone rang, and the caller ID showed a name I hadn't seen in a year, David Chen, owner of Precision MedTech. They manufactured time-sensitive diagnostic kits. Late was not an option. "Alex, thank God you answered." He sounded panicked. "I have a critical shipment of reagents stuck somewhere. Keystone has no idea where it is. They keep talking about a system consolidation. It was supposed to be in Raleigh 4 hours ago." I pulled up my own network map, a system I'd built for moments just like this. "David, calm down. Your shipment isn't lost. It's buried." Keystone closed their Greensboro cross-dock. They're trying to force 3 days' worth of volume through the Charlotte hub, which can't handle it. Your reagents are sitting in an unrefrigerated truck in a queue that's probably half a mile long. Silence. Then, a defeated sigh. "You know more about my shipment from your house than the company I'm paying thousands of dollars to." "I know their system, David. I know where they're broken," I said. I couldn't help him this time. I didn't have the capacity. But the seed was planted. After the call, I walked to my whiteboard. Under Keystone's weaknesses, I drew a thick, satisfying line through operational inflexibility. Then, I picked up a marker and, on the other board under Apex Targets, I wrote 2 words: Precision MedTech. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about proving a point. Frank had called me redundant. The truth was, I had been the only thing holding his crumbling empire together. After they fired you, what would you do? Use the skills they paid for to start a competing business, or just take the high road and find a new job?